we've got Tennessee moving on from starting quarterback Nico Iamaleava, sources told ESPN, in the wake of his decision to not attend practice Friday amid NIL contract discussions with the school. So when somebody early in the chat said Tennessee standing up for college football, that's what Tennessee's doing. That is a bit surprising unless they've already calculated this is not going well otherwise, and we don't think we can recover it. So maybe it's a hardened stance, which I would hope that it is a principled stance that they're taking here based on how these schools and the football programs bow to these athletes. I'm thinking it's more of a calculated move to say, let's just get in front of this. We've lost him. We're not going to recover this relationship. Maybe he's asking for too much. Let's move on from this. And we'll take what appears to be a principled stance, but we're already moving on anyway. So Volunteers coach Josh Heupel informed the team at meeting Saturday morning. Tennessee plays the spring game this afternoon. Sources said Iamaleava missing practice Friday proved to be the tipping point. And again, good for the University of Tennessee. And again, I am just conjecturing that there's more to it than just, okay, principled stance. But again, I believe they're doing the right thing here. Iamaleava notified offensive coordinator Jay Hazel late Friday that he was in the process of filling out his paperwork and planned to enter the transfer portal when it opens Wednesday. So they were going to split anyway, of course. Heupel and other staff members had been trying to reach Iamaleava and his representatives to no avail. You can't even get a hold of the guy. Okay, if this is accurate, this is pathetic here. This is the kid's head coach. This is the guy that has given him the bulk of his instruction, his development. Josh Heupel's an excellent football coach, especially on the offensive side and dealing with quarterbacks. He has given Iamaleava some valuable instruction, tips, advice, and worked his rear end off in trying to develop him. And suddenly he can't call him. That in and of itself, again, if that's accurate, the standoff between the two sides stemmed from Iamaleava's contract, and the school decided to cut ties after those talks emerged publicly this week, and Iamaleava subsequently skipped practice. You don't skip practice. I'm sure that some of you are becoming, the more this sinks in, and again, this is really nothing that shouldn't have logically been predicted or expected as a next step in all of this. If you really care about college football, you should become more and more pissed off about this. And I am, the more I read about this and really let it sink in, that he doesn't get back to his head coach. He's had a relationship with him for probably 3 years at this point. More than that, going back to his recruitment, of course. And doesn't get back to his head coach. Doesn't get back to his head coach. That's pathetic. These are the times I wish I had a bigger platform, or I could actually speak to Nico, could have him on for an interview and really let him know that he's being a child, that he's being a punk. Again, I'm not going to say that necessarily everything we read in these reports is true, but so I'm making somewhat of an assumption that these things are true and have been confirmed. So that's a punk move. You don't get back to your head coach. Punk move. Pathetic. That is a pathetic, childish, petty, cowardly way to approach this. A lot of these guys turn out to be cowards. And I understand he's only like 20 years old. And so this is a byproduct of, well, we saw how his father acted on Twitter, and maybe he was just defending his kid at that point. So I'm not going to go so crazy about that. But the offspring, a reflection of the parents, typically. So just a punk move, not getting back to your head coach. A punk move that you have an NIL compensation in place. And even if you want that to be renegotiated, you're not living up to that agreement by not going to practice. If you want to renegotiate, you continue to work, study, go to practice, do all the right things. Yeah, I would not touch this kid. I would not touch him. Not necessarily that he's the most awful person in the world. I'm not portraying him that way, but based on this behavior that I'm sure is impacted by the people that influence him, no thank you. Don't want you on my football. If you played cornerback, a different position, maybe we could just, let you play your position. And if you're the best cornerback we can find, maybe I consider that for the good of the football team and trying to win football games. But you're the quarterback. You have a strong influence. And you know what? I'll pull back from the cornerback comment. No, regardless of what position you play. But I just think it's more weighty when you're the quarterback. And if you're going to be that childish, petty, and it's a punk move. That's the best terminology I can use that is strong without being excessively harsh. He's being a punk. He's not returning messages and phone calls from his head coach. Pathetic. And he's not showing up at practice, even though he's being paid. So hopefully that gets reimbursed, or I'm sure they've cut him off immediately. Hopefully they've cut him off immediately. Oh, shoot, man. As soon as he missed anything, as soon as there was any indication of him not fulfilling his role on the team, and I guess it was this mispractice. Did he say whether he notified the team that he was going to mispractice or just didn't show up? It matters to me a little bit. Subsequently, skipped practice. Tennessee was aware that Iamaleava's representatives had reached out to at least one other school, Oregon, prior to the start of spring practice. Oregon said it was not interested. Now, what I'm rooting for, and maybe this is me being a little petty myself, so I'll admit it. Maybe I'm rooting that this kid's playing for like a group of 5 school this year. Who needs a quarterback? We've not gone through that exercise right now. Kentucky could probably use him. The day before the winter portal ended in January, Iamaleava's representatives asked for his deal to increase to the $4 million range. Based on what? Based on being a marginal SEC quarterback last year? We weren't going to flinch this time either. But Tennessee did not redo his deal. This is what has always infuriated me about sports contracts. And I don't know of any other industry that operates this way. So we've seen it for years and years and years in the 4 major sports probably. And it's always infuriated me. And now we're seeing it attempted by a college kid. D, good point. He can't transfer within the SEC. He can, but there has to be agreement on both sides. So that's a good point, D. Didn't think of that. But yeah, there are transfers within the SEC that are approved by both schools and the conference. So it does happen, but you're right. It's not an automatic transfer. So what has always infuriated me, it's a bit strong, but has annoyed me going way, way back, is that these athletes sign a contract, you sign your 5-year contract, you go out and have a good year, and you want to renegotiate. No, you signed a contract. The point of a contract is that you may be giving up possibility of raising the ceiling with your performance. You're giving up that possibility for greater volume, greater increase, revenue, income. You're giving that potential up for security. That's what a contract is at its most basic point. Well, these athletes go out there and they have a decent season and they want to renegotiate a contract. But when they have a crappy season, does the club go to them? I always wanted these teams to go back to the athlete and say, you know what? Your contract's at $10 million a year. We brought in an arbitrator. What is the other position called when they analyze the contract versus the competition and make a determination? Shoot. Well, it's like in Major League Baseball. I don't know if this still happens because of the CBA, but if they still go to arbitration, you used to hear that all the time in Major League Baseball about these players going to arbitration, and it was just a messy scene because the team basically has to tear their performance down to shreds, and then the arbiter basically says, "Well, he's asking for $5 million. The club wants to pay $3 million, or was paying $3 million." And is actually willing to go to $4 million. I'm going to rule at 4.2 million. And the club and the player just went back and forth in court and really said some nasty things about each other. And now they're going to continue this relationship. But in this case, I would love, again, in professional sports, and now here we are on the college level, for the club or the team to go back to the player and say, you're not living up to the terms of your contract in regards to your performance. Your performance is substandard. All right, we'll move on from there. We weren't going to flinch this time either. This time, so they had flinched previously. Iamaleava was making $2.4 million on a contract that was reported to be $8 million when he signed it, but he started receiving payments when he was still in high school, and the total value of the contract would have been closer to $10 million over the life of the deal. Iamaleava just completed his redshirt freshman season, which means he would have 3 seasons remaining at his next destination. The spring transfer portal opens Wednesday. He is expected to be the most notable player available. I also want to make it clear that he's making a big mistake. He's acting like I just outlined. He's filling in all those boxes, punk, petty, etc. But that doesn't mean he's a bad person. That doesn't mean that he can't mature. That doesn't mean he can't be better in the future. Maybe he'll learn from this situation. Maybe he'll need to take a step back, or 2 or 3, to then realize, I had a good thing going there. Iamaleava showed promise his first year, leading Tennessee to the CFP 10-3 season, 2,616 yards passing, 19 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 63.8% completion percentage. Tennessee's offense finished number 9 in the 16-team SEC in scoring offense last year. Iamaleava was the conference's number 10 quarterback in passing yards per game. That's not a great stat. It's not a great stat to evaluate quarterbacks. I would like to see his passer rating. The move puts both Tennessee and Iamaleava in difficult situations heading into the 25 season. Iamaleava's departure leaves Tennessee with just 2 scholarship quarterbacks, neither of whom has started a college game. One factor looming over both sides is that the SEC rules prohibit transferring within the conference in the spring if the player desires immediate eligibility. That means Iamaleava can't go to an SEC school, and no quarterback on an SEC roster can go to Tennessee if they hope to play in 2025. Okay, so as pointed out by one of our viewers, and then I gave the caveat that if there's an agreement, but maybe that's just in the fall cycle and the winter cycle, that the SEC rule about transfers, if agreed upon by the schools, because we see SEC players transfer all the time from school to school. but there's an agreement, and maybe even with an agreement, it's not within the rules during the spring semester. That's what it sounds like there. Sources said officials from Tennessee's collective have already begun reaching out to third parties tied to potential Iamaleava replacements for 2025. With Iamaleava's future uncertain, collective officials began to make calls Friday. One quarterback got more money from his school Friday after Tennessee's collective called third-party officials tied to. One quarterback got more money from his school Friday after Tennessee's collective called third-party officials tied to him. Just make them employees, and therefore they are then going to benefit from that status, but they're also going to have to pay the accountability for that status. And there's not going to be tampering involved. There's not going to be reaching out, contacting teams and players that play for other teams. That shouldn't occur. They have a scholarship with another school. That should not occur. We know it occurs all over the place. But if they're under contract, they're under contract. Let's go to contracts. Unless I'm missing something here, this is maybe the last straw, in at least my opinion, of contracts in college football. And I actually, as we discussed last night and throughout the week, I thought that was a great way to go anyway. Once this transfer portal situation got out of hand, that at least if we introduce contracts, that we could tie the player to the school for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and then that just takes them off limits. And it's there's no free agency past that. So let's say the best quarterback in the country comes out and he signs at Nebraska. And just like any contract negotiation, he wants to make a decision as to whether, well, I can make the most money in year one if I just sign a 1-year contract, or I can get a little bit more security and make a little less money if I go 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And there's a determination made between the school and what they're willing to do and what the player's willing to do. And of course, the school, if they have recruited these guys and signed them, just like the old recruiting process, they're going to want to sign them, I would think, to all 4-year contracts. But the player may not want that. And I think it's reasonable going forward that you don't, I don't think you can legally force the players or there to only be 4-year contracts. So there would be different levels of contracts in terms of the length of the contracts. And that would at least, we would be done with this. The market for Iamaleava will be a fascinating one, especially if he is seeking the same amount of money, $2.5 million. While there is available money in the system the next few months before the era of revenue share is codified, it's difficult for a program to bring in a quarterback transfer with high-priced NIL demands in the late spring portal. Just go through the Big Ten. Whose starting quarterback is not as good as Nico? It's a lot of close calls. There are a lot of close calls out there, and obviously, if your quarterback is in the same range and he's been loyal and working hard, you don't want to bring in. He's going to have to be significantly or decidedly better than the quarterback that's already your starter, because you're not going to upset your locker room by bringing a kid in, especially that acted like this, in over your established starting quarterback who's most likely respected and liked by his teammates. So if you're Rutgers, you're not going to bring in Nico Iamaleava because he's not substantially right now a better quarterback than Ethan Kalkumanis. He's not. He potentially could be. He's more dynamic. He's got a better running skill. But I don't make that. If I'm anybody in the Big Ten, maybe UCLA's got a fairly rough quarterback situation. and maybe Maryland, MJ Morris. And I don't know. I can't think who went to Northwestern. Who went to Northwestern? They just picked up a transfer quarterback. Shoot, I can't think of who Northwestern picked up. It was somebody from, I believe, the American Conference. Why am I blanking out on Northwestern's pickup? But Wisconsin. If we're just talking about talent, we're not talking about bringing on this baggage. We're just talking about talent. Wisconsin. That would be his best landing spot in regards to the team benefiting from him. But do you bring him in? I still say no. Oh, the SMU kid. Yes, thank you, Gene. Preston Stone, yes, is the Northwestern. Yeah, Preston Stone, who 2 years ago, 28 touchdowns, 6 picks. So, no, like we're not upsetting our locker room and bringing in baggage to play over Preston Stone. I'm saying the only place that Purdue, man, I've lost it on Purdue. Who's starting this year for Purdue? Now that Hudson Card is gone, I'm trying to think. They picked up somebody. Anyway, I just think considering it's not just a straight evaluation of is this guy better than our starting quarterback? It's is he that much better than our starting quarterback that we're really going to take this on? Bootzilla, Florida State. We got Thomas Castellanos, the Boston College quarterback. Nico's better than he is. You're right. But man, do you want to deal with this? Florida State's got enough problems. When you go from just, is he better than our current quarterback to, oh, he's slightly better, we think, but we could really screw up our football team because they're going to be pissed off because they got a guy that they like, they love, they've worked for, they've respected, who's the starting quarterback, and we're suddenly going to bring this guy in. Yeah, North Carolina is an interesting one because I believe Max Johnson is back. Little peep, bringing up North Carolina. I just came across that the other day, and I apologize. I am not up on the quarterback situations at some of these places that have lost quarterbacks. So last year, of course, Max Johnson was lost in the opener against Minnesota. And then I can't think of Connor Harrell, his backup running quarterback, can't do the job. He's not a starting quarterback. And beyond that, I don't know that North Carolina's done anything to give Max Johnson any competition, but I got to think somebody else is in the mix at North Carolina. So anyway, I would love to dig deep on all these teams and kind of look at it, but if we did that on the air, it'd take forever. So I might be wrong, but maybe Nico and his entourage did not think this completely through. Again, he had a good situation in Tennessee. Why botch that up? And this $2.4 million figure, I believe it rates fairly well, stacks up fairly well against other quarterbacks across college football. This is only every so often do we get real data or information that either gets leaked or is just thrown out there by the athletes or the individuals involved that we get an exact count on how much money these athletes are making. So we've got a ballpark range, so we don't know nor can compare this to other quarterbacks in the country, but I believe it's a strong number. So why? I know why. Greed. That's what this all came down to. Greed and pride. They are horrible things.